The morning sun hung low over Highway 16, casting long golden shadows across the asphalt just outside Atlanta. It was 8:47 a.m., a time when the world usually feels like it is waking up, stretching its limbs and preparing for the day ahead. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine and distant exhaust, a typical Georgia morning that promised nothing out of the ordinary. For Agent Jordan Miles, it was supposed to be just another commute. Jordan, 37 years old and sharp as a tack, sat behind the wheel of his black Ford Explorer. It was a sturdy, unmarked vehicle, issued by the government, designed to blend in rather than stand out. To the casual observer, it was just an SUV. To Jordan, it was a tool of his trade, much like the silver watch on his wrist or the plain suit he wore. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was focused, his mind already drifting toward the federal briefing awaiting him in Washington, D.C. He had papers to review, strategies to finalize, and a quiet determination to serve the country he loved. He adjusted his sunglasses, checked his mirrors, and merged smoothly into the flow of traffic, unaware that his life was about to intersect with a storm of arrogance and prejudice. 3 miles back, sitting in the idle haze of a gas station exit, was Officer Blake Thompson. Blake was a man who wore his badge like a crown and his authority like a weapon. He had been watching the road with a predatory stillness, his eyes scanning for anything that didn't fit his narrow definition of order. When Jordan's black SUV passed by, something in Blake's mind clicked. It wasn't a traffic violation. It wasn't suspicious behavior. It was simply the image of a black man driving a nice car. In Blake's worldview, this was an anomaly, a discrepancy that needed correcting. He didn't see a federal agent. He saw a target. Blake pulled out onto the highway, his cruiser humming with aggressive intent. He followed Jordan for 3 miles, hunting, for a reason. He watched Jordan change lanes. It was a smooth, legal maneuver, perfectly executed with no signal needed as the lane was clear, but Blake seized upon it. It was convenient. It was enough. With a flick of his switch, the red and blue lights erupted in Jordan's rearview mirror, slicing through the calm morning atmosphere. Jordan saw the lights and felt a familiar, heavy sigh settle in his chest. He had done this before, too many times. He knew the script. He eased the Explorer onto the shoulder, the tires crunching softly against the gravel. He placed both hands clearly at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, palms open, visible. It was a posture of compliance, but also of self-preservation. He took a deep breath, centering himself, pushing down the frustration that bubbled beneath the surface. He waited. Blake approached fast, his boots hitting the pavement with heavy, authoritative steps. He didn't walk, he stormed. His sunglasses were lowered, hiding his eyes but not his sneer. His ego was palpable, radiating off him in waves. He reached the driver's side window and didn't bother with pleasantries. "License and registration, now," Blake barked, his voice sharp and demanding. Jordan turned his head slightly, keeping his hands firmly on the wheel. "Good morning, officer," he said, his voice calm, steady, and devoid of fear. "Is there a reason you stopped me?" "Don't talk," Blake snapped, cutting him off before the sentence was even finished. "Just hand it over." Over. Jordan moved slowly, deliberately. Every movement was calculated to show he was not a threat. He reached for his wallet, not for a driver's license, but for the federal badge, tucked, securely, inside. He knew what this badge represented. It represented years of training, of sacrifice, of integrity. But before he could even present it, Blake shouted again, his voice rising in volume and aggression. "Keep your hands where I can see them." Jordan froze. His hand hovered near his pocket. He looked at Blake, really looked at him, and saw not a protector of the peace, but a man, drunk, on power. He had seen this movie play out before, in news clips, in stories from friends, in the quiet fears of his community. But today, the stakes were different. Today, he was not just a citizen, he was an agent of the very system Blake claimed to uphold. Blake leaned closer to the window, his face inches from Jordan's, his breath hot and angry. "What's a guy like you doing driving this car? And, quote," he sneered, his eyes scanning the interior of the vehicle with disdain. "You steal it!" The question hung in the air, ugly and insulting. Jordan's jaw tightened, a muscle feathering in his cheek. He kept his voice low, controlled. "This vehicle belongs to the US government," he stated simply. Blake smirked, a cruel twisting of his lips. "Yeah, and I'm the president." He didn't wait for further explanation. He yanked the door handle, pulling it open with unnecessary force. "Step out of the car. Now." Jordan unbuckled his seatbelt, the click sounding loud in the sudden silence. He stepped out slowly, keeping his hands visible at his sides. He stood tall, dignified, refusing to shrink under the officer's glare. Nearby, at a diner just off the highway, patrons had noticed the commotion. Phones were raised. Cameras were recording. Neighbors, strangers, witnesses, they were all watching. Blake circled Jordan like a predator sizing up its prey, his hand resting casually near his holster. "Hands on the hood," Blake commanded. Jordan complied silently. He placed his hands on the warm metal of the car, feeling the vibration of the engine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't resist. He knew that resistance, even verbal, would be twisted into justification for whatever Blake wanted to do next. "What's in the trunk?" Blake barked, moving around to the back of the car. "Official documents," Jordan replied, his voice still soft, still calm. "We'll see about that," Blake muttered. He began opening compartments, rummaging through Jordan's personal space without warrant, without probable cause, ignoring every protocol he was sworn to follow. Jordan spoke again, his tone gentle but firm. "Officer, you might want to call your supervisor before this goes further." Blake laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, I'll call someone. All right, after I cuff you for obstruction." That was the breaking point. Not because Jordan was afraid, but because he realized that Blake had crossed a line from which there was no return. This wasn't just a traffic stop, it was a performance of power, a display of bias that needed to be documented, challenged, and corrected. Jordan looked up, locking eyes with Blake through the reflection of the car window. "Do it," he said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming steel. "And watch what happens next. Teh, teh." At that moment, the wail of sirens grew louder. 2 more patrol cars screeched onto the shoulder, their lights flashing in a chaotic dance of red and blue. Traffic slowed to a crawl. Drivers craned their necks to see what was happening. The crowd at the diner grew larger, phones held high, capturing every second. Blake strutted toward the new arrivals, smiling, confident in his dominance. "We got ourselves a tough guy here," he said, smirking at the younger officers who had just arrived. "Claims he works for the feds." The younger cop, fresh-faced and uncertain, looked at Jordan, then at Blake. "Sir, maybe we should check his ID first," he suggested hesitantly. "I said cuff him," Blake barked, his authority fraying at the edges. Jordan stayed silent as the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists. He didn't flinch. He didn't struggle. He knew what came next. He knew that the truth, once released, cannot be cuffed. As Blake walked him toward the patrol car, treating him like a common criminal, Jordan finally spoke again. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the stillness of the morning. "The last man who cuffed me without reason lost his badge," Jordan said. "You're about to join him." Blake laughed, dismissing it as a empty threat. "You threatening a police officer?" Jordan tilted his head, his expression unreadable behind his sunglasses. "No," he said. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away with your dignity." Then, quietly, he nodded toward the dash cam mounted on Blake's cruiser. "That camera records audio too, right?" M. Blake paused, confused. "Yeah. So? It..." "Congratulations," Jordan said. "You just confessed to racial profiling, illegal search, and unlawful detainment. Live." Blake blinked. The color drained from his face as he turned to look at the dash cam, then at the crowd of people recording him with their phones. His smirk faded, replaced by a dawning horror. One. He realized, too late, that he was not the hunter in this scenario. He was the prey. Jordan continued, his voice steady. "But don't worry, the system you're streaming to, I helped build it." At that exact moment, a black SUV with tinted windows and government plates pulled up behind the patrol cars. It moved, with precision, blocking the road. 2 agents stepped out, their movements synchronized, professional. One of them flashed a badge that gleamed in the sunlight. FBI Internal Affairs, the agent announced, his voice booming with authority. Release him, now! The crowd gasped. A murmur of shock rippled through the onlookers. Blake hesitated, his mind racing, trying to find a way out. He was resisting, he stammered, his voice trembling. No, the senior agent said, his voice cold as ice. He was testing you, and you failed. They moved quickly, uncuffing Jordan. The senior agent saluted him, a gesture of profound respect. Sir, we're sorry for the delay. Blake's face turned pale, his knees seemingly weak. Sir, wait, sir, he tried to say, but the words caught in his throat. Jordan turned to him, calm as ever. He adjusted his suit jacket, straightened his tie, and looked Blake in the eye. You wanted to know what I do for a living? Jordan asked. I investigate corruption within law enforcement. Congratulations, Officer Thompson. You just made the list. The crowd cheered. It wasn't a raucous, wild cheer, but a sustained, appreciative applause. Phones captured every word, every expression, every moment of justice being served. Blake looked like he wanted to disappear into the asphalt, to sink into the earth and never be seen again. The next day, the video hit social media. The title was simple, yet powerful. Police officer harasses black FBI agent, instantly regrets it. Within 24 hours, it had 6 million views. News outlets picked up the story, calling it poetic justice, a rare glimpse of accountability in a system often criticized for its lack thereof. The police department released a statement, swift and decisive. We do not tolerate misconduct, regardless of rank. Blake was suspended, pending investigation, his career hanging by a thread. But for Jordan, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about seeing Blake suffer. It was about proof. It was about showing that integrity matters more than authority. In an interview later that week, sitting in his office with the American flag behind him, Jordan spoke with a humility that surprised many. I didn't want him fired, Jordan said, looking directly into the camera. I wanted him educated, because arrogance in uniform is more dangerous than any weapon. It erodes trust. It breaks communities, and it kills. He began hosting training sessions for local police departments, traveling across the state, teaching officers about racial bias, restraint, and professionalism. He didn't lecture them, he talked to them, he shared stories, he listened. One clip from these sessions went viral, where Jordan stood before a room of skeptical officers and said, "Respect isn't given by your badge. It's earned by how you treat the powerless. When you pull someone over, you are not just enforcing the law, you are representing the law. Make sure you are worthy of that representation."